All right, so around this time yesterday, Nate Diaz went and got his phone. He scrolled and swiped until he found the notes application. He opened that bitch up, typed out a statement, didn't bother using a spell check on it. Took a screenshot. It was 2:34 p.m. in whatever part of America he was in. His battery was half full, decent for that time of day. He went and opened Twitter, went to compose tweet, pressed that little plus button, went and found the image of the screenshot of the statement that he had just written, and then he hit the fucking post button. And at that very moment, my heart broke. This is the battle camp. Please hit the subscribe button. You'll find it in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. So if you don't know, if you're unaware, if no one's told you, and if you're an MMA fan, then you've probably been living under a rock, because this is all the MMA community have been talking about. This is all I've been thinking about. And Nate Diaz is saying that he's not fighting next week against Jorge Masvidal. Now, I'm sure we're all aware why he's not fighting, and we're all aware of the statement, and we've all read it, and we've tried to decipher it. So I just want to make a couple of points about the whole situation, really. Firstly, I've seen this article on ESPN posted by Mark Raimondi and Ariel Helwani, and I just want to read out this sentence. Sources told ESPN, sources, that magic word, that Diaz tested positive for trace amounts of a prohibited selective androgen receptor modulator, brackets SARM, sounds like a robot, but that's the substance he's tested positive for. Now, the tone of the statement that he's put out is basically Nate Diaz is saying that, I don't know how you've managed to get this result from a sample that I provided. I think it's a load of bullshit. You guys have made a mistake. Someone's out here to get me, and you guys need to fix this, or I'm not fighting on Saturday night next week. More importantly, and this is the thing that I really want to talk about, is this sentence in this statement. I better find it now. I should have really found it before. So until UFC, Usada, or whoever is fucking with me fixes it, I won't be competing. I'm not going to play their game and try and hide it or keep it quiet as they suggested. I'm not going to have my name tainted as a cheater like these other motherfuckers who keep quiet until after the fight just so they can get paid. Fucking cheaters. So what he's basically implying, well, he's not really implying, he's basically telling us that he was told that there's an opportunity to keep this quiet until after the fight. And just as soon as I read that, I got these flashbacks of Brock Lesnar fighting Mark Hunt and then failing a drugs test. But we were told the test was, the actual drug test happened before the fight, but the results were only made available after the fight. Gives me flashbacks of John Jones, and I'm sorry, but the timelines of all of John Jones's fucking failed drugs tests have kind of merged into one for me. And I can't remember exactly what fight it was, but I'm 99% certain it happened to him as well, where he was, where he had the fight, and then it came out a day or two after that he had failed a drugs test that happened before the fight. And the fact that Nate Diaz he's the first one to ever say this. He's the first one to ever say that I'm not going to play their game and try and hide it or keep it quiet as they suggested. And just that there severely brings the relationship between USADA and the UFC into disrepute. Because I've mentioned this a couple of times where I've said I don't feel like the punishments that USADA give out to fighters is equal. If you're a bigger name, if you're more valuable to the UFC, it seems like there are different punishments for you compared to someone that fights on the undercard that's, I don't know, some 135 pounder. For example, if someone on the undercard of the Singapore card tomorrow night was flagged for the exact same amount of this SARM substance in their body, if some unknown unranked 135 pounder was flagged for that same substance, the same amount as Nate Diaz, do you think he'd be given the option, or do you think they just pull him from the fucking card? I know what I think. USADA is meant to be operating as an independent, in my mind anyway. This is the impression that I'm under. USADA are meant to be operating as a totally independent entity from the UFC. The UFC have contracted USADA to conduct the drugs testing and implement their drug testing policy. Now, if that's the case, then how have we got to a position that Nate Diaz is suggesting he's currently in, where he was told that this has been flagged, but there's an opportunity to keep it quiet until after the fight? How have we got there? Why are USADA making amendments for fighters that the UFC have a vested interest in? This fight card over the weekend is built off the back of Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz won his fight against Pettis. Nate Diaz is the one that called out Jorge Masvidal. Nate Diaz is the one that brought up this BMF thing. It's because of him this whole scenario is happening. There's no other reason why. They need Nate Diaz to be in this fight. And if this is true, then a lot of questions need to be answered. And it's funny, I come onto this thing about a lot of questions needing to be answered, because why the fuck are USADA and UFC so quiet on this? Why have they not come out and said anything? It's all well and good be acting holier than thou about, oh yeah, you know, we're the only ones that do year-round drug testing. Our fighters' health is the most important thing. Blah 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 blah. But where is all of that now? Where is that energy now? Like, it wasn't there with Brock Lesnar. Like, Brock Lesnar didn't have to do this 4-month testing, enter into the pool for 4 months before you could sign a fight. They found this what's the right word? They found this technicality to allow him to fight against Mark Hunt. When John Jones had this stuff in his system, they found a technicality and called it a picogram. And okay, it's not enough to enhance your performances. So John Jones is allowed to fight. And I'm not saying that John Jones is 100% guilty. I don't know. But what I'm saying is there's a blatant imbalance in how fighters that bring in revenue are treated compared to fighters that don't bring in revenue are treated. And it shouldn't be that way, because fighters with a bigger name and a bigger profile and fighters that bring in more money, the rules are more relaxed for them. And then that, by proxy, basically means that the UFC are influencing USADA in how they implement the drug testing policy and protocol. And that's not right. You can't have that. If you're going to have that, then fucking get rid of USADA. Stop doing all this drug testing. If it's not an even playing field, then don't play. It's actually quite surprising that the UFC haven't come out and addressed this, haven't come out and said anything. This, for me, is the biggest fight card of the year for the UFC. For me as a fan, anyway. And this could potentially be the biggest fight that the UFC have put on, Jorge Masvidal against Nate Diaz, this year. And for this to come out the way it has, and for them to not say anything. And here's another thing. Like, if USADA are independent of the UFC, what's stopping USADA from saying anything? What's stopping fucking Jeff Nowitzki, the golden snitch, from saying anything? I don't get it. I don't understand. It's almost like they sat in a meeting room somewhere in some office trying to work out, all right, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to resolve this? How are we going to change this around so Nate Diaz fights over the weekend, next weekend? Like, I'm the biggest Nate Diaz fan. Like, I was upset when this happened. But more important than me being a Nate Diaz fan is this whole drug testing policy being fair for all the fighters that are fighting under the UFC banner. And I think that this statement here that Nate Diaz has put out basically illustrates how it's not fair, and illustrates the fact that the UFC, like with most things that they're involved in, have an unfair amount of power in that relationship between themselves and USADA. I don't know how this is going to play out. I hope that it resolves itself somehow and Nate Diaz does fight over the weekend. But there's a possibility and there's potential that with all the things that Nate Diaz has done in the cage, all the moments he's given us as fans, all the big wins he's had, all the manner of victories, all the highlight reel actions that he's put in the cage, all the things that he said in press conferences, the way he's conducted his career, there's a chance that this statement here might just be the biggest thing that he's ever done in terms of the impact that it has on the UFC, on MMA. I doubt it, but there's a chance. I have a feeling the UFC will find a way to kind of sweep this under the carpet, sweep this under the rug. But boy, where does that leave us? I've been seeing on Twitter that Leon Edwards has been in training, and there's a potential that he's going to be the replacement. As the late notice replacement goes, that's the best you're ever going to get. That's a legit contender. That's a man that has been on a win streak of, I don't know, 10 fights or something like that. That's a man that is in a position that basically deserves a title shot. And there's history there between him and Masvidal, obviously with the 3-piece and a fucking soda, all of that bollocks. Like, that's a fight that I would genuinely pay to watch. So, like, as far as late replacements go, that's the pinnacle of a late replacement for me, because that fight there, Masvidal and Edwards, is definitely something that I would have tuned into anyway. Like I say, obviously I'd rather have seen Nate Diaz in that fight, but if we have to have a replacement, then Leon Edwards is a very good one for me personally. Jorge Masvidal's been I don't even know why I'm saying Jorge Masvidal's been tweeting, because obviously it's not him, it's his fucking manager. And I hate the way he tweets, because he never gets the right cadence, he never gets the right tone of how Jorge Masvidal communicates. But this tweet here, you not the baddest mofo in the game, in brackets, I am. Fuck knows why he's put it in brackets. But you are one of the cleanest mofos, Nate Diaz 209. I'll see you on November 2nd. I know your name I know your name is clean. I don't need USA or US anti-doping to tell me shit. That sounds like a desperate attempt of a manager trying to ensure that his client gets the biggest payday of his life to me. Obviously I'm going to speak on this a bit more as it unfolds, but at the moment this is all we know. We know that Nate Diaz has put out a statement and not much else. We know that according to Ariel Helwani, they know what substance it is. We don't know how much it is. And here's one last point I wanted to make. perhaps USADA need to rethink how they do things, because clearly Nate Diaz was tested up until his fight against Pettis. Pretty soon after that fight, he signed up to fight against Jorge Masvidal. I'm assuming he's not been only tested, he's been tested more than once in training camp for this Masvidal fight. So if all of his test results came back clean before the Pettis fight, and his post-fight test of the night of the fight was clean, and then he's been tested now in this training camp period, and I'm assuming they came back clean. So let's just say you had 3 tests, and then on the 4th one, this thing's coming. Surely they can tell that, okay, hold on, look, he's got this in his system, but it's a trace amount. So whatever the benefits of having this in his system is, he's not realizing it because he's just not had enough. It's like taking a sip of beer and expecting to get drunk. It's not going to happen. The whole point of this is to stop people from genuinely taking drugs to enhance their performances, to give them an edge over the person that they're fighting. Maybe they need to rethink their policy and just say, all right, let's make a mental note of that, and we need to keep an eye on that, because he's managed to find this in his system, but it's not enough to gain an edge. So let's not ban him. Let's not make a big deal about this. The same thing could have been done with John Jones and all of his picogram stuff. Because if they get so stringent and so detailed and so low level in terms of the drug tests they do, we're going to end up in a situation where everyone's getting banned left, right, and center, and the people that and a big chunk of these people, these fighters, haven't cheated. They've unintentionally cheated. It might be that the drug testing process has gotten so good and so strong and so detailed that normal people walking up and down the street like you and I might take a test and we might fucking pop for something. And if you see the state of my belly, I'm no fucking fighter. If you see how shit my stamina is, there's no way that I'm taking anything that's enhancing any way that I perform in anything that I do in life. So that's worth thinking about as well. But anyway, I don't have a conclusion to this video because the whole thing hasn't concluded. This is just what I'm thinking up until now. Obviously, we all need to see how it plays out, but I definitely want to hear what your thoughts are. Put them in the comments below. Don't be scared to hit the like button. If you've enjoyed this, hit the share button. If you're still here and you haven't subscribed already, do it, because fuck me, I've been going on for 16 minutes now. So, yeah, we are where we are, and we'll see where we go. I'll catch you guys next time.